The movie starts with Cairo, our main character, sharing about herself. Just turned 18, she feels like she doesn't quite fit in with others her age. Cairo describes herself as wealthy, but stuck in a small town. She lives in a big old house called Level Hill in Tennessee. Even though she has money, Cairo spends a lot of time alone because her parents often travel abroad. They're hardly ever home, leaving Cairo to deal with her solitude. To cope with being by herself, Cairo turns to books and writing. She loves reading and writing stories. It's what makes her feel better when she's lonely. Cairo's only friend at school, Winnie Black, suggests she join a creative writing class. Winnie knows Cairo loves writing, so Cairo decides to give it a try. In the class, she meets Mr. Jonathan Miller, the English teacher. Mr. Miller doesn't seem all that special at first, but Cairo is excited because he's also a published author, just like she dreams of being one day. Cairo surprises Mr. Miller by revealing her eagerness to dive into the books they'll be studying, expressing her genuine excitement for literature. She impresses him further with her extensive knowledge of various literary works, including Miller's own book, Apostrophes and Ampersands. Miller, once an aspiring writer himself, had set aside his writing ambitions after marrying and becoming a teacher. However, his wife, Beatrice, a successful author, often belittles him for not pursuing his writing career further. One evening, Miller shares with Beatrice how one of his students mentioned his book in class, but she does not look too interested. After this, they drink some whiskey and get intimate, but Beatrice's work interrupts their moment multiple times, leaving them frustrated and their evening disrupted. Meanwhile, Cairo talks to Winnie about her struggles with writing her college admission essay for Yale University. The essay prompt asks her to reflect on her greatest achievement so far, but Cairo feels like she hasn't accomplished anything noteworthy. Even though Winnie reminds her of her excellent grades and academic success, Cairo doesn't think it's remarkable enough. Then, Winnie suggests that Cairo write about her relationship with a teacher, like she plans to do with their gym teacher, Boris Fillmore, who happens to be Mr. Miller's best friend. She mentions how Mr. Miller pays special attention to Cairo during their English class. Then, in a playful manner, Winnie jokes that Cairo should seduce Mr. Miller and write about it in her college essay. The following day in class, Mr. Miller focuses his attention on Cairo, as usual, and requests her presence after the lesson. Meanwhile, Cairo immerses herself in Miller's novel, Apostrophes and Ampersands, committing a section to memory. Later, as Miller is engrossed in his work, Boris bursts in with excitement. Miller invites him to dinner with his wife. Boris gets happy and leaves the room dancing while Miller mimics his friend's dance moves. But their light-hearted moment is interrupted by Cairo's unexpected arrival. Cairo lightens the mood with a laugh, commenting on Miller's imitation of Boris's dance moves. Their conversation turns to the latest assignment, and Cairo reveals her inspiration from Miller's book, reciting a meaningful passage. Miller is pleasantly surprised by Cairo's insight and talent, acknowledging that his own work has never received such praise. He fondly recalls Cairo's previous writing, demonstrating his admiration for her skills as a student. Following their conversation, Miller assigns Cairo a writing task and asks her to craft a short story mimicking the style of her favorite author. As they chat, Cairo expresses her disinterest in anything related to Tennessee. Sensing her lack of enthusiasm, Miller proposes they attend a nearby poetry event together to discuss their assignments. Excited, Cairo agrees to join him. Later that evening, Miller, his wife Beatrice, and gym teacher Boris gather at a local diner where Winnie is working as a part-time waitress and takes their orders. During this, Beatrice asks Miller about the student he mentioned, assuming it's Winnie, but Miller clarifies that it's actually Cairo, her friend. Beatrice, slightly concerned, vents her frustrations about Miller's stagnant writing career to Boris. She feels Miller hasn't pursued his ambitions as a writer since becoming a high school teacher, unlike herself, a successful author. The scene shifts to the poetry event where Miller and Cairo explore their shared interests in literature, bonding over novels, poems, and Tennessee culture outside of the classroom. During class, Miller receives a text from his wife, Beatrice, suggesting they spend the weekend at the beach. Miller agrees to her idea, But just as he's about to wrap up for the day, Cairo approaches him. She shares that she's chosen to write her assignment in the style of her favorite author, Henry Miller. Henry Miller's writing is known for being controversial due to its explicit language and expression, which some people find offensive. Initially unsure about Cairo's choice, Mr. Miller trusts her writing abilities and ultimately approves her decision. Cairo then discovers that Mr. Miller will be away for the weekend with his wife, leaving her feeling upset. In an attempt to disrupt their plans, she leaves her cell phone in Miller's bag before he leaves the school premises. When Miller gets home, he finds out that their weekend trip has been canceled because Beatrice can't take time off from work. He's disappointed, but Cairo's call adds to his frustration. She explains that she's lost her cell phone and asks Miller to return it to her house. It's a small inconvenience, but with his plans already dashed, it feels like another annoyance on top of everything else. Miller decides to drive over to Cairo's grand mansion. As he arrives, a sudden downpour begins, adding to the dramatic atmosphere. Cairo, dressed elegantly in an evening gown, emerges from the house to greet him. She invites him to come closer, but Miller, feeling a bit hesitant, suggests she come to him instead. Despite the rain pouring down around them, they share a passionate kiss, which adds a moment of unexpected intimacy in the midst of the storm. In the next scene, we see Cairo alone in her house, writing and contemplating the magical moment that just had occurred between her and Mr. Miller. She writes an erotic short story about the sexual relationship between a teacher and his student as her midterm assignment. She then emails her assignment to Miller. In the meantime, Miller and his wife are currently engaged in their individual works. Beatrice asks Miller to give her some personal time as she cannot focus on her work. This once again frustrates him, and as a result, Miller goes over to his old work shed and prints out the assignment sent by Cairo. He begins to read the erotic short story, after which he cannot help but get aroused. He then eventually touches himself while reading the story. The next day, Mr. Miller's demeanor shifts significantly. He appears burdened with guilt, realizing the inappropriateness of their interaction. In class, Miller openly declares Cairo's story as unacceptable and insists she revises it. Cairo, taken aback, asserts that the story reflects their connection. However, Miller vehemently denies any such relationship, emphasizing its non-existence. Cairo's heart sinks as she senses a sudden shift in their dynamic, realizing she may no longer hold significance to him. Hearing this, Cairo gets upset and hurt. At the same time, she calls him out for his cowardice and hypocrisy. To break her heart further, Miller then says that he was foolish for trusting she could write in the style, calling her a child. This makes Cairo angry, and she claims that he blurred the line of their relationship and real life. Their conversation turns into an argument, and Miller says she is his student and that's all, and if she misunderstood something, then that's her problem. This hits like a final nail in the coffin, and in response, Cairo criticizes him, calling him a mediocre writer, and warns him that denying his role in their apparent relationship will have negative consequences. Cairo then leaves the scene devastated and upset. At home, she drinks her sadness with Winnie and tells her about what happened earlier. Offended by Miller's rejection, Cairo decides to share her story with the school administrators, but this is not where she intends to stop. The following day, she intends to expose a possible affair between a student and a teacher and make Miller face potential threats to his career. Consequently, Beatrice receives a call from the school administration informing her about the situation. She gets upset and then questions if there is anything going on between Miller and the student. However, Miller assures her insistently that there is nothing romantic or inappropriate between them. In the next scene, both Cairo and Miller are called to the vice principal's office. They're interviewed separately about their relationship. Even though Miller insists that nothing inappropriate happened, he takes full responsibility as the adult in the situation. This leads to his suspension from teaching. It also puts a strain on his friendship with Boris, who blames Miller for not knowing his boundaries as a teacher. Boris comes to see Miller's and points out that he knows where the line is and always avoids crossing it in his interactions with Winnie, who openly expresses her feelings towards him. Miller's feels guilty for his actions but does not say anything in return. That night, Miller tells his wife, Beatrice, about his suspension from the school. However, Beatrice becomes more suspicious about his relationship with Cairo. At first, when she heard about a student showing interest in her husband, she didn't think much of it. She even tried to use it to add excitement to their own relationship. On top of this, Beatrice didn't mind when Miller told her about Cairo's story, thinking he must be enjoying the attention. However, her attitude changes when she asks Miller if he likes Cairo, to which Miller remains silent. Now, she believes her husband may have also reciprocated Cairo's feelings. This angers Beatrice, causing her to express pent-up anger and highlight the toxic nature of their marriage. The couple gets into a heated argument, both criticizing each other for their lack of commitment to the marriage. Eventually, Beatrice decides to file for a divorce and leave Miller. Meanwhile, Winnie realizes the impact of Cairo's actions on Miller. So, she asks her friend to withdraw the charges against him. But Cairo refuses to do so. Instead, she sees Miller's downfall as her greatest achievement to date. She decides wants to mention the experience in her admission essay, in a similar style to Miller's book. She is even determined to testify against Miller. Cairo eventually uses her experiences to write her Yale application essay. In her essay, she highlights how she challenged societal norms related to age and sexuality. She reflects on the profound lessons she learned about the seriousness of mature relationships and how she will use this X. In the end, Miller loses his job and the people closest to him. But despite hitting rock bottom, he unexpectedly discovers inspiration for the first time in years. He decides to write a new book. And this is where the movie ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. And thanks for watching.